Muito boa tarde para todos. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our afternoon sessions of the Symposium Filaments of the Atlantic Heritage, something that we began actually in person many years ago as part of the community organizations here in Tulare between 1990 and 2002. And then, as a suggestion actually from our president at Fresno State, Dr. Saul Jimenez Sandoval, who attended the event in the late 1990s, we brought it back as an online event. And this year's theme is Atlantic Winds, Pacific Waves, Transoceanic Dialogues on Identity and Culture. And we have sessions. The morning sessions were in Portuguese. The afternoon sessions will be three of them in English and one in Portuguese. And then we will continue tomorrow between 9 o'clock in the morning and 1:30 in the afternoon. We're happy to have a colleague and friend, Alcidia Gomes, who is a director at executive director at Ag One Foundation, who was in the inception of the this new wave, let's put it, of Portuguesism or Azorianism at Fresno State. It's good to remind folks that Fresno State has been teaching Portuguese actually since 1965. So next year is actually a year to celebrate Portuguese at Fresno State. It'll be the 70th birthday of Fresno State having Portuguese, but it hasn't been on a regular basis, and it was just a course and then two courses and then on and off, but it has been a present. But a few years ago, almost a decade ago, a new wave began with a grant from the Luso American Development Foundation, FLAD, and it all started what today is an array of projects, but at that time to begin an exchange program, intercâmbios, as we say in Portuguese, between the University of the Azores and Fresno State, but directly with the Jordan College of Agricultural Science and Technology. Alcidia, thanks for joining us. I know you're busy.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here today, both from a personal and professional standpoint. So thanks.
Thank you. Last time you were with us on a webinar we were doing about the presence of women in the Portuguese community, and we had you and three other panelists, if you recall. So let's talk. Let's go back memory lane. I recall that our friend now living in the island of São Jorge, David Mendonça, was part of the Tulare Angra Sister City Foundation, and at that time we had had a conversation with Vasco Rato, who was at the time president of FLAD. He was here on a visit. He had met with then Congressman Devin Nunes, and in a conversation, we mentioned the possibility, and of course, the possibility with Fresno State. And I know that he contacted you, and he contacted a couple of professors he also knew on a personal basis at Fresno State, and the dialogue began with Dean. I can't think of her name now. I can see her in front of me.
Sandy Whitty.
Sandra Whitty, that's right. And so tell us a little bit about what year was that and how did that process begin?
Yeah. So goodness, that was 2016. And it started with an idea that then sparked a discussion that then led to a seed grant to establish a travel learn program for students from Fresno State and the University of the Azores focused on agricultural disciplines. And as you may know, Fresno State is one of 23 universities within the California State University system. We have almost 25,000 students in 8 colleges. One of the colleges is the Jordan College of Agricultural Sciences and Technologies, as you mentioned. And it just made sense because Fresno State is located geographically in the center of the valley, and it's the epicenter for agriculture. And so to kind of paint the picture, California and the Central Valley specifically grows about 25% of the nation's food, 60% of the fruits, and 30% of the vegetables come from right here. And so the Central Valley is also home to tens of thousands of people who have roots in the Azores and who are involved in all facets of agriculture. So the partnership with FLOD and the University of the Azores aligns very well with Fresno State and its educational mission. So that's how things got started. And so the first year, about a dozen students from the University of the Azores, along with a couple professors, came to Fresno State. It was a 2-week travel learn program, meaning that they would travel to different places here in the Central Valley, meet with different business owners, many of who were from the Azores or had connections to the Azores, and just got a different sense of what agriculture is as compared to the Azores, because certainly here it's on a very, very large scale. And then the next summer, our students, also about a dozen, traveled to Terceta. They visited agricultural businesses both in Terceta and in San Miguel. And in both cases, students also got to experience some cultural activities, whether they were in California or whether they were in the Azores. So that's how it started.
And actually, before the students were able to go, I know that you and Dean Winnie went to the University of the Azores to set up kind of the parameters for a possible what they call in the Azores protocolo or MOU, memorandum of understanding between both universities, and it kind of worked out that after that initial statement. So. Let us know exactly how that happened, that first trip, and then the signing that was also part of a larger group.
Yeah. So, as you said, Dr. Sandy Whitty, who was dean of the college at the time, she and I and one other colleague traveled back to visit with faculty and leadership of the university. In fact, Dr. Sandra Leal, who is now the president of the university, was vice rector at the time. And so we began to kind of lay the foundation for the president of the university, who at the time was Dr. Joe Castro. He and his wife, Mary Castro, Mary Borges, she is of Portuguese descent. They then followed up in June for the official signing. What I think is really memorable about that signing is really twofold, or three. I mean, it in my from my lens, my parents and I was 3 at the time, 2.5 at the time, immigrated here for a better opportunity, right? And so now to be signing this memorandum of agreement with the University of the Azores for student educational opportunities for me was personally and professionally, again, really fulfilling. So we had our president there, and it just happened to be that there was also a group touring from the Central Valley with one of the local travel agents. And so we were able to time it so that this group of about 20 who were also alumni or donors to the university got to participate in the signing of the agreement. And then the other thing that I think is really memorable is that a few years before, one of the players in our marching band was from Hillmar, and he was overseeing the Hillmar marching band that was traveling back to the Azores that summer to participate in the San Juaninas. And so I had reached out to them in the hopes that they would practice the Fresno State fight song. And so right after the signing, those kids all played the Fresno State fight song, which was a great surprise for the president, his wife Mary, and then all of the other Fresno State guests who were there. So it was a great way to formally cement and celebrate this new relationship.
Wonderful. And our current president also has had the opportunity to visit the Azores as part of also a group that I think, a year later or 2 years later, a couple of years later.
Yep, it was 2019.
2019,
actually.
so 3 years later. Yes, okay.
Yeah. So President Castro established a Portuguese leadership council. And there had been some great interest. Well, and even if I step back a little bit, once PBBI was launched, I think it has put Fresno State on the map in so many different ways when it comes to connecting the Central Valley back to the Azores, the educational component, the writing of books, the translating of books. I just think that the work that you have done is really immeasurable. So I thank you for that. And I'm actually honored to call you a colleague. So thank you.
Well, let me just correct. It's we, but I mean that's okay. It's been you, obviously, myself, the staff that works with you, the
Yeah.
staff that works with us. It's been a joyful, and our president and our deans.
Yeah.
I mean, we couldn't ask for any better deans in
No.
all three and all of them that have been throughout.
Yeah.
This journey. So
Yeah.
a collaborative work. Just to
It
ratify
is.
that.
Oh, well.
But yeah. But go
But
ahead. Sorry.
you are the
Well,
linchpin,
yeah, we all are. That's
the
okay.
hub.
Okay.
So from
Next.
so from the leadership, the Portuguese Leadership Council, was this idea. Many universities do travel programs, and Fresno State doesn't. But here was this great opportunity to do a travel learn program for our alumni and friends. We have done it now for our students. And because there was so much interest from the community in Fresno State, including our president at the time, who was Dr. Castro, and our provost, who is now our president, there were about 36 people who went to the Azores in June. And President Castro was there, as was our current president, Saul Jimenez Sandoval, his wife, Mariana, and his two kids, Leo and Ari. It was their first time to the Azores. Now, our president has lived for a time as a student in Lisbon. He also is fluent in Portuguese. And so for him, this was a trip that he has said he will never forget. And we're hoping to maybe repeat that sometime in the future.
It does need to be repeated, and we also need to have hopefully host one of these days the president of the University of the Azores to kind of cement the bond even a little bit further.
Yeah.
We haven't been able. We've sent multiple, as you know, multiple invitations, but because of their schedule and different things, we haven't been able to put. And then, of course, the pandemic for 2.5
Right.
years for travel.
Right.
But
Right.
hopefully we can do that. I believe that Professor Susana Mirabel will probably be rector for a few more years, so it'd be great to have him. But from this exchange, from this travel and learn program of about a dozen students, 10 to 12 students in both directions, we kind of the system grew into a bit more, and now it's a month-long internship for our students and for theirs as well. So explain a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Happy to. So after the first year, we all agreed that giving students a little more hands-on education, having the ability to not only see, but now do. And so now every year it's about 4 students that either go to the Azores from Fresno State, or 4 students that go back to Fresno State from the Azores, and they spend a month working in the case of Fresno State students to the Azores, they are put into businesses in Terceta, the agricultural businesses. And so they get to roll up their sleeves and be a partner and help in the business. And then for students from the Azores, instead of putting them in businesses in California or in the Central Valley, Fresno State has a 1,000-acre farm that's contiguous to campus. And so that farm represents about 20 different commodities or animal units. So we have cows, and so we produce fluid milk and ice cream and cheese. We have a winery. We grow grapes, and we have olives for olive oil. We have a meats lab that does sausage. And so one of the things that sets Fresno State's students apart is that our students actually not only work on the farm, but they also have laboratories on the farm. And so the kids from the Azores actually get to do that same work. I remember fondly, there were two students one particular summer that were both studying to be veterinarians. And so we put them to work. And so when it came to either treating animals, giving them shots or that sort of thing, they actually got to do it. And so I remember the one student emailed and said, and by then he was now doing his classes in Lisbon, is that the professor would actually explain and tell them certain processes and things to do, but not actually do them. And they did those things when they were here in Fresno and on our campus farm. And so that's the thing that I think is the reoccurring theme in this, is that students, ours and students from the Azores, find great value in not only reading it in the book, but then after they read it in the book, actually either putting that to the test or to practice on our campus farm.
And I think, yeah, it's wonderful. We have excellent testimonies. As a matter of fact, from last year's, we recorded, and we haven't been able, MCJ hasn't been able to produce the video yet, but we're hoping to do that. Maybe even by adding some testimonials from this year as well, and actually do some kind of a small documentary on some of these testimonials from these students. But they all, enjoy it tremendously, and our students who have done the internship in business, which last year wasn't able to, but this year hopefully that's what it's going to happen again. They also enjoyed that. That was one of the concerns I had, in such a technical advantage, setting as Fresno State is. How are our students going to learn? What are they going to learn when they go to a setting there? But from what your experience and what we've heard from some of the debriefings, they actually sometimes benefit from learning from smaller institutions there, organizations, businesses that may do something at a smaller scale, but not necessarily less technologically advanced.
No, you're exactly right. You know, it right from the get-go, the whether it's a travel learn program, whether it's doing an internship elsewhere, those are considered high impact practices. And so from an educational standpoint, those practices help students grow. It broadens their horizons, improves their cultural competence, and it helps them gain a global perspective, right? And so just because kids from the University of the Azores come here and they're not going to have 1,000 acres necessarily to farm, or a business that employs hundreds and hundreds of people, they are going to gain the understanding of the necessary steps to be successful, right? Whether it's from a sustainability standpoint, whether it's from a water conservation standpoint, it's all just a matter of scale, right? And the same thing for our students when they go there. Granted, California agriculture is larger than the small farms and small businesses there, but it's the same thing, right? It's about how do you sell your product? How do you get the best return? How do you work in the cooperative environment? And in both sides, how do you also impact our elected officials? Because in both countries, agricultural policy is very important and can really impact how we farm.
Right. Indeed. We of course got a grant, as you mentioned, from some seed money from FLAD for a couple of years. We have not that Platt has gone a different direction in some aspects, even with PPPI. But we had right from the beginning you were able to secure some community donors, namely, of course, Elder and Cindy Dominguez, the major donors.
Yeah.
The Sister City Foundation has been yearly also help, have given us some yearly check to help some of the expenses. And we had the group Aposento from Turlock, the so-called, as we call them here, Suicide Squad. It's always a tough name to call, but it's kind of suicidal to
Yeah.
grab a ball. But anyway, that we the Furcados and others as well. You know, we have some of our Fresno State members of the President's Leadership Council who host the students in their homes, such as
Yeah.
Richard Machado, I'm thinking, and others. So it's kind of a community. The community has kind of come together. We have a business that is that is interested in hosting a student who may want to have a specialty in that business. So for those watching here throughout California, especially, well, we're obviously willing to accept the donations for this. But I think it has also helped us tremendously this year, and hopefully will be to continue, at least that's the plan, that SATA is furnishing the air flights for our students. And then the city of Angra furnishes the air flights for the students coming over. It'd be totally impossible without all these partners. And now, with the help of SATA and certainly the city of Angra, they've been tremendously impactful in this both ways, correct?
Yeah. Yep. There is no way that a program like this would be funded with state dollars. They're just, you just, it won't happen, right? And so if there is value to the student, and if we can find partnerships, I think that's what has made this program um, successful because of all the partners. And I also think that from the donor standpoint, many of who are Portuguese or have that connection, I also think it speaks to pride, right? In their culture and who they are, where they've come from and where they've gone. And now to be able to share that with young minds and help them to also see the world and be successful, and then have them consider to do something like this, pay it forward in the future is really invaluable. So all the pieces of the puzzle, and all the people who participate have played such an integral role in making this successful, because we could not do it any other way. And as you said, we are always looking for additional partners.
Yeah, indeed. I think for the program to continue and to be fruitful in years to come, it would be interesting and helpful to have another two or three partners jump on with us because we don't know how some of these things are going to
Yeah.
continue. I mean, as long as SATA is a public entity, it will. But once it becomes a private, you know, in 2 years, we don't know how that's going to happen. So
Right.
there are ways that we need to explore. And you're absolutely right. I actually had, just FYI, it can be shared publicly. I had a conversation privately a couple of weeks ago with Assemblywoman Cecilia Curry. So Assemblywoman, she's not in our district, unfortunately. She's Portuguese, but she's not in the Fresno area. She's from that Davis North, you know, up to Napa Valley. But she is very, very in tune with what's going on in Fresno State. And I kind of highly encouraged her to maybe look at the possibility, because the Azores has a sister city relationship with the state of California and they want to revitalize that. Well, let's look at our program because
Mm,
we've already got something that, you
yeah.
know, that we could, if not state funds, but private funds that could be directed
Yeah.
to this program. Why start something new when you already have a program? You know, because obviously she mentioned other universities, but why start something new when you have a program that's already has had the success that ours has? So this year, one of the things, though, it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we've seemed to be having more and more interest. from year to year. I mean, sometimes it's four students. I recall one year that I was, working with you, that we had exactly four students. So it was,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
now it seems like, I think this year we have seven that wanted to go there, and I believe from there to here we have like nine or 10. So it's been
Yeah,
increasing the numbers, which is good, and also they're not all Portuguese. I mean, it's people who are ag majors.
yeah,
Obviously, in the Azores are all Portuguese, but the ones here
yeah,
are people that are just ag majors, and that's important for the Azores.
yeah. So, one of Fresno State's pride points is that we're probably one of the most diverse campuses in California, uh, given where we're located. And so while some of the students have been Portuguese, there have been some who are of Indian descent, some who are Hispanic, some who are traditionally American, right? And so it's, I think it's really interesting that, well, it, let me make a comment also about our demographics. Some of our students have never flown in a plane before, right? Because there are some disadvantaged communities in our rural areas of the communities that we serve. And so some of these kids, it's the first time that they have to get a passport. It's the first time that they're going to be on an international flight, but many have never been on a flight, period. So just the travel piece alone is really life changing, right? And so having the opportunity to provide students with that kind of experience, I think, is also an important part of this. And so I think year after year, the program grows, more students learn about it. I have more students actually every year ask me about it. And then occasionally you're going to have students or parents who maybe are not ready for that international experience, being away from home. Um, and so you hope that if not this time, maybe, maybe next year. Uh, but there is great opportunity for broadening students' horizons through this.
And I think that it's a plus, I believe, and now I'm being biased, but it's a plus that, and I think you'll be biased too, but or both biased, but it's a plus that it's in the Azores is still a very safe area of the
Mm,
world. I mean, anything can happen anywhere,
yeah,
but it is a very safe area. Crime rate is almost non-existent if you compare it to some even mid-sized cities, of 70 and 80,000 in the United States.
yeah,
And so, whether they're, in coastal areas or in the Midwest, even the crime rate in the Azores is very, very low. And so I think that that is a plus for parents who are concerned, that they're going to be, quite a few thousand miles away from home.
yeah,
Don't you think that it is a plus in that aspect? I think people don't know the Azores, true, but somehow they
right.
sometimes know a Portuguese person
Yeah,
who's either maybe not them, but the parents or grandparents or great grandparents came from there and their neighbors, and so that helps.
yeah. Um, so one of the ways I describe the connections in this valley, um, for anybody who's of a certain age, is if you remember spirograph as a kid. And so you start talking about, Mary or Joe, and then you start adding other layers, and there's these natural connections. And so I think about those as I think about the wheels that we turn when we do spirograph, right? There's all these connections in the valley. And so if someone is talking about, well, I wonder if this is, something I should do, if the Azores is a place I should travel to, invariably they're going to come in contact with someone who can give them their own lens, maybe even from having been there, or from other students excuse me. So you're right. The Azores, while is known, there's a lot of unknown. And so I think it adds validity to it when there's other people who talk about its safeness, what the culture is like, and that it's not just coming from the university, right? It's very easy for a university to say, you should do this travel learn program in England, right? But having people who are from the Azores here in the community, I think lends a lot of kind of an in-depth lens to anybody who wants to go.
Indeed, as we finish up, thanks, Alcidia, again for spending this time with us. Talk about this wonderful program that we hope to continue for many, 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 many more years, and we hope that folks can jump on board if they are willing to help us in the aspect of the financial aspect of it, which is important because our students, whether they're going or the ones coming, it's no expense to the students. So basically, they have to get their own passport, yes, but there are no expenses to the students, and so it's a paid internship in the aspect that they get their airline and and of course they get their lodging, and going to the Azores, they get most of their meals. Coming over here, the same thing. They get actually all of them because we were able to secure some community partners with that. But one of the things that that I'd like to touch upon is we changed it this year so folks can know that was that our students going over are going in July this year, which they usually went in June around the big San Joaninhas festas, and I guess I'm the dirty person in the game because I'm the one that proposed that maybe we move away from the San Joaninhas, only because they can really live the island a little bit more in its normal stage, although as you know, and I even know this from I'm going to be traveling to the Azores in the next few days or the next few weeks, and I'm going to your beautiful island of Flores and can't get a hotel. I had to get an Airbnb, which is lovely. I love the place, but so and it's in May, and so the Azores are different than when it was years ago. All islands where you could find it was only tougher in June, July, and August, maybe part of September, but the other months, not any longer. There's tourism year round, and especially now in the springtime, April and May, and also September, October. But they're going to be seeing the island with a different perspective. And our students coming over they also are coming in July, which is a tough month as far as the heat, but and it can only happen, and I'd like to explain that. So first of all, the students going there will be going where Angara is a bit more in its normal setting, and the students and the island Terceira, but there's lots of different freguesia festas, village festas. But coming over, the students, we can only do this in the summertime because of the faculty. It's really there's much of the faculty is obviously either doing research or traveling or vacationing, but you were able to arrange faculty to work with the students, and we appreciate that because it's normally a time that they're not around.
No, you're right. Many faculty are what we call 9-month faculty. And so unless they have a research project that they have included summer salary for themselves, many faculty members are not around in the summer. And so that limits how many faculty we have to interact with these students. And so it's those faculty who are responsible, excuse me, for one of the farm units. So whether it's the dairy or the beef unit or a farm market, because those are 12-month operations or laboratories. And so on the farm, those faculties that are involved are here year round. So then those that are doing research, if we can kind of marry together the discipline with the student's major, then it becomes a really great win-win, right? As opposed to just in general. And you're right about moving from June to July for our students to go over. because there is plenty of opportunity to still enjoy and experience the cultural side of Terceira. We were finding that because São Joaninhas is in the middle almost of June, that it was really impacting the number of really work hours that
Sure.
our students were experiencing, because there's so many people that are involved in all the different activities during São Joaninhas, that we thought July is going to be a better time frame. So I think it's a win-win overall.
Yeah, we're just we every year we try to make it a better
Yeah.
experience for both
Yep.
ours and their students.
You're
Thank you
right.
so much. Thank you for all of this. This is all, by the way, all of you should know, this is volunteer work on Alcidia's part. It's not like part of her job description. So if you look at her job description, one of them is not, making sure that a cultural program, exchange program, farm opportunities for students. I mean, obviously she's, part of Alcidia's work is, providing more opportunities for the students, and this is one of them. But I think she pours her heart and soul into this. I appreciate that, and all of the other team members at your Ag One Foundation do the same, and Nancy in the dean's office and everything
Yeah.
else. So we appreciate everyone that
Yeah.
involved in that, including the president, who, if he's around, hosts them for dinner, which is
Yeah.
lovely.
It takes a village.
It does. Thank you so much, Alcidia.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you do, and hopefully this will entice even more students and more families to encourage your students to go to Fresno State and to take this opportunity.
Yep. Go
Appreciate it.
dogs.
Thank you. Go Dogs. Take care.